When you walk the streets of Hattiesburg, when you hear the music, taste the food, or meet the people that call this place home, you can feel it, the heartbeat of our city. I'm Kate Fletcher, and this is the Heart of Hattiesburg podcast, a podcast dedicated to sharing the people, stories, and organizations that keep the hub city thriving. Hey everyone, it's Kate, and welcome back to another episode of the Heart of Hattiesburg podcast. For this episode, and as the semester is coming to a close, I wanted to just sit down with you guys and kind of have a conversation about who I am and my story, and just some questions answered about the podcast experience and what I've learned.
So what inspired you to start the Heart of Hattiesburg podcast?
So I was inspired to start the Heart of Hattiesburg podcast because when I look around at our community, I just feel a sense of joy and just passion for the events and all the moving pieces that make Hattiesburg the thriving community. But I wanted to kind of take a closer look at that and see, the stories of people who all make this happen. How did they get to where they are now? What experience did they have that led them here? I wanted to hear the real stories behind the heartbeat of Hattiesburg.
How do you choose guests for the podcast?
So choosing guests for the podcast is really quite easy because if you look around at everything that's happening, the businesses, the events, every single person that is a part of those movements have a story. And so choosing guests are really easy because you ask someone, you pull someone and say, hey, what's your story? How are you a part of this? What's your role in everything? And every story matters and every story is important to the big final product that is the event or the project or just working for that particular business. So it's really cool to see even maybe the small pieces of the puzzle that kind of make it all fit together.
So what's your process for preparing for an episode?
So my process for preparing for an episode is actually a little bit more structured than you would think. I kind of break it down into three main parts. So whatever guest I'm having on, I want to hear three main things from them and cover those topics for our listeners. So the first way would be hearing how they got to Hattiesburg. Maybe they've lived here their whole life. Maybe they're traveled in and started working here full time. I kind of like to see that journey. And then the second way is kind of getting into what they're currently doing. So what does it look like in their roles? What does it look like for their day-to-day life? And then the third way would be how do we get involved? That call to action. How do the listeners participate in what they're doing? How can I get involved in what they're doing? So when I look at the process, I have a goal in mind, and it's those three things.
What do you hope listeners take away from each episode?
So if I could describe one thing that my listeners could take away from each episode, that would be connection. So when they hear the story, when they're listening to the episode, they might see that friendly face in town. They might see her at events or whatever the case may be. But now they know her personally. They know her story and they know that connection. And so by me connecting with the community for this podcast, I hope that connection extends to my audience with the guests that I have on. So they're able to make a connection and just a better, genuine community among my listeners.
What has been your favorite moment as a host so far?
That's a tough question because there are so many favorite moments, but I think I have two that I would put as my top. So the first one would be when I got to sit down with Miss Karen Sims at Hope Clinic. And when she was sharing her story, she was filled with so much excitement and passion that she started crying. She got a little emotional. And there I was sitting there as a host trying to ask these questions, and I began to feel emotional by the stories that she was telling. And so I think that's such a special moment from the podcast. The second moment that I think has been really fulfilling for me as a host is to see my guests excited to come on. They just want to be asked to share their story. They want to share, they want to pour in to us and to help me learn. And I think that's just been really rewarding.
What do you love most about Hattiesburg?
So, what I love most about Hattiesburg might seem like a silly answer, and of course, I ask my guests the same question, and we all have a similar idea of our favorite part of Hattiesburg. But my favorite part of Hattiesburg is the Keg and Barrel taco truck at the one that's closer to the downtown area. That taco truck is my favorite. I love the tacos. I love the menu there. It is so good. But beyond that, I'm almost there weekly. I spend a lot of time there with friends and family. And that is what I love most about Hattiesburg, the opportunity to go and sit down with your family, connect with the community, everyone outside, eating the taco truck inside. It just feels like a big family. You know, the tables next to you are waving and saying hello, and we're sharing conversation, and I just love that. I love the opportunity for connection.
So, for our last question, what future plans do you have for the podcast?
So I'm so glad you asked. That is an exciting question. As the semester is coming to a close, I may not be continuing the podcast in this way, but as you also may know, I'm employed at Windcare University, where I serve as the administrative assistant for our external relations and communications department. And a part of that, I would love to continue this podcast and expand it in my role at Cary and just kind of make it a part of what we do as a university. So that would be my goal for this podcast and for my role at William Carey. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Heart of Hattiesburg podcast, and I hope that you've also grown to love and share the same passion for the people and the city as I have.
Subscribe today and be a part of the movement that keeps Hattiesburg's heart beating strong.